Hey everybody, I'm Shane Ireland and welcome to another episode of Tasting Notes. I wanted to do something a little bit different today and I decided that I'm gonna basically keep doing something a little bit different. It is time for me to revisit some of my old favorites. And I thought that I would begin with smoking through all of the flakes produced by both of the Gawith houses, Samuel Gawith and Gawith Hoggarth. So, if you've been keeping up with Tasting Notes for a while, you may remember me talking about some of these Lakeland style tobaccos in the past. And I used to smoke a ton of this stuff really regularly. And I think over the years I sort of narrowed down to one or two facings that I return to the most often. But now I feel like it's time to revisit some old friends, like I said. So today I'm starting with Gawith and Hoggarth's Ennerdale Flake. It is one of the most ubiquitous Lakeland style flakes, and as far as I know, still the top seller from the Gawith Hoggarth line of flakes. So, Ennerdale. What is Ennerdale? Ennerdale is an English aromatic flake, and it is comprised predominantly of Virginia leaf from Brazil and from Africa with a touch of African burley. To that, a whole host of Lakeland essences are added, most notably almond, vanilla, fruit flavorings, and probably a little something else that's not disclosed. It is an extremely unique recipe for a topping of tobacco, definitely in the vein of, like I said, the sort of English Lakeland style. Ennerdale has been probably, I would say maybe one of the most polarizing blends in terms of just the pipe world in general. You either love it or it doesn't really vibe with you because of the strong Lakeland essence. I think that the folks who love those flavors are going to find something that they can smoke all day, every day here. And the folks who are a little bit more curious about those sort of flavors, or maybe even a little bit like cautious about those, it's actually a really good place to start, a really good introduction into Lakeland style tobaccos. And honestly, I think it's one of the most unique tobacco experiences you can have. So let's get into it. Before I get into the tin note, which is very complex as you might imagine, I want to talk a little bit about the flakes. Really, really beautiful pressed flakes, like all the flakes that we see coming out of the Gawith houses. I would say a good mix between sort of lighter flecks, medium to chestnut brown, and a couple of darker strips there. They are cut thin and a little bit on the moist side. I would say that depending on your preferences and depending on the relative humidity in your area, you may want to give this a little bit more airtime than you typically give a straight Virginia tobacco straight out of the tin. I don't recommend it being much more than like 10 to 15 minutes at the high end. The flakes do perform really well once you get them going in the pipe, and they pack really well. So even if it still feels slightly on the moist side, I would say go ahead and smoke it, because you're going to get the full array of flavors and complexity that a tobacco like this offers. The more you dry it down, the less of that lovely character that comes from the Lakeland style topping you're going to get. And that's what you want when you're smoking something like this. So, wow. As one would imagine, the tin note is luscious, I would say even vibrant, and quite pungent. Yes, you have those, what a lot of people refer to as perfumey or soapy type aromas. I personally love that aroma and even that flavor. There's also a good bit of natural tobacco quality coming through. I can smell the sort of grassiness and the citrusy notes from the Virginias. The quality of the tobacco and the pressing is also apparent. It's really rich underneath all of those top notes. I would say that maybe I get a little bit of the nuttiness and the almond aroma. I think like, amaretto type of a thing. The rest of it to me is on the fruity side and the floral side. And it's really a potpourri of those type of flavors. It's really not so easy to pick out individual notes here because again, this flavoring, this dressing on the tobacco is so distinct and so complex that it kind of gives its own character more so than any of the individual components that comprise it. Or that it's comprised of, I should say. It's a really interesting tin note, and honestly, I could smell it all day and be pretty stoked about that. I mean, I do like smoking it. I also think that this is, I would like wear that as a cologne in the summer, I would also absolutely buy that candle and like burn it all the time. It smells incredible. And even in the room note, I think a lot of that comes across. Everybody that I've smoked this type of tobacco around, including my cameraman at the moment, have reported that the room note is really, really pleasing. So I also think that for those of you that do smoke indoors in mixed company, this is something that you're going to get away with, and you probably will get complimented on, truthfully. So let's get into the smoke itself. Like I said, with a few minutes of dry time and rubbing it out from the full flakes, I find that it takes to the flame really well and burns really coolly and really slowly. I think a lot of the burn and the behavior of this tobacco in the pipe relates to the way that it's pressed, and you really do end up, even if you rub it out fully, with a super slow burning and super cool smoking tobacco. One thing that really surprised me upon revisiting Ennerdale is just how much more the quality Virginias and Burleys come through in the smoke, even on the initial light. Years and years ago, when I first tried this tobacco, I would have considered it maybe one of the more strongly flavored Lakeland flakes. And while the flavoring definitely comes through in the smoke, I think it also contributes to a really, really interesting retrohale. It contributes to the complexity, and it contributes to the really pleasing room note. I think that I'm tasting much more of the actual tobaccos themselves than I thought I was all those years ago. So like I said, people who are used to the Lakeland essences and smoking the Lakeland tobaccos, they're going to find this one to be pretty much medium across the spectrum, both in strength and flavor and body, and the strength of the actual Lakeland essence themselves in the smoke. Somebody that's not used to it might find this a little bit strong, a little bit perfumey, but I think that if you really slow down, if you retrohale pretty often, you're going to get the lovely quality of these Brazilian and African grown Virginias and a little bit of that African Burley, just as much as you get the Lakeland essence, really. It does have that Lakeland essence and that sort of soapy quality on the back of my palate through the retrohale, but it's on a base of tobaccos that are really grassy and bright and zesty and citrusy. And these flavors play really well with one another. I think that I do pick up more of the vanilla and the almond than even the fruity flavors on the palate. And the vanilla and the almond lend these Virginias a really significant sort of creaminess. And I think that's both the weight and the density of the smoke on the palate and the actual flavors. Like you got this nice, it's like it's hard to explain. Like an almond croissant and like a coffee with milk in it. It's kind of hard to explain. But I do get these cereal-like notes, these malty-like notes, a lot of what I expect from a great straight Virginia, and just in the background kind of all the time, and it's a little bit more prevalent through the retrohale, you get the lovely floral aromas. There's a woodiness, there is some depth. I'm going to attribute that to the African Virginias and the Burley. But you get a little bit of earthiness and a little bit of depth, a little bit of woody character that's balanced really well by the sort of vanilla notes, the nuttiness, and some of that fruit and floral interplay that comes through mostly on the retrohale for me. I should have mentioned earlier that for my journey back through all of the Gawith Flakes, I'm going to be relying heavily on my Clare and clay pipes. Very, very modern design and quality from Clarin, and really high quality clay as well. I really love these for tasting purposes. You know, you're not going to really end up with a ton of residual flavors if you're switching back and forth from tobaccos that are very, very different than one another. And also I find that I get a dry and consistent smoke when using a clay. The practicality of a briar, taking it around, I also love the sort of bonding that I get from my briar pipes. I do think that my clays are my go-to pipes for tasting though. The further I get down the bowl, I do think that the sort of both the creaminess that I was experiencing on the palate is sort of intensifying, and also those floral notes and maybe also the vanilla specifically are getting a little bit amplified, a little bit more prevalent. The citrusy interplay and the vanilla notes and the nuttiness from both the almond and the burley, I guess, I end up with something that reminds me a little bit like orange creamsicle, which is super awesome. I love that flavor. And then on top of that, like I said, I am getting more and more of a floral quality, incense-like quality, a perfumey-like quality through the retrohale, which I think is what lovers of the Lakeland style flakes really, really love. And I do enjoy it so much. It's such a good change of pace. Whether you're an English smoker, like an American or Danish style aromatic smoker, or a straight Virginia guy, smoking something like Ennerdale is going to sort of just reset your palate. It's going to give you a break from the usual and sort of get your receptors and your, you know what I mean, your olfactory senses thrown for a loop and sort of reset. While I do think that fans of this style tobacco could smoke Ennerdale all day long, for me it's a change of pace tobacco that I really enjoy a handful of times, particularly in the spring. I will say that this is, again, one of the most unique tobacco experiences you can have as a pipe smoker. I highly recommend everybody who either has never tried it or it's been a while since you've revisited it, go back to Ennerdale, give it a shot, and let us know what you think. But I really feel like once you have enough experience and enough practice and the proper technique as a pipe smoker, coming back to these English style aromatic flakes is one of the most rewarding experiences that you can have. The complexity is through the roof, and there's a reason that this style of tobacco has been so popular for so long. Thanks everybody. I'll see you next time.